I'm really delighted to say that this morning we're joined by a former Olympic silver medalist at badminton, Gail Emms. Gail has been into Wembley a couple of times, so those students who've joined Gail's sessions will know how fantastic they've been. This session is going to be hosted by our program leader for sports psychology, Andrea Firth-Clark, because Andrea has a particular theme she's been working on with her students, which is sports injuries. So I'm just here to welcome you and facilitate the meeting. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andrea, and I will let the webinar begin, and I hope you all enjoy it.
Hi, Gail. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, sun is shining, so it's all good. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I just want to tell people some of your achievements that you've done. I'm not going to list them all because we'll be here all day. But for those of you who don't know Gail came in and talked to our psychology students before, earlier on in the semester, and she did a fantastic job. So I wanted to invite her back because, you know, she's just very giving and very informative in what she says. And I thought you'd be the best person to talk about injury. So Gail won gold in the World Championships in Madrid in 2006, and also at the European Championships in Geneva 2004. And she also won silver medal with her partner Nathan Robertson in the 2004 Olympic Games. So these are just some of your achievements, but they're pretty big ones, I think. So in all of that time, Gail, you must have had some injuries. So could you tell us about them and how it affected you?
Yeah, well, any professional athlete, you are training your butts off, basically. It's your job. So in badminton, to give you an idea of the training that I was doing, I went professional probably from the age of 21. So when I was growing up, training was really about having fun. So training was just playing, a couple of drills, a couple of coaching sessions, but it was more about, you know, sort of running around on a hockey pitch or running around on a netball pitch or doing an athletics competition for the school. So it wasn't really seen as formalized training as such. I never did any weight training, for instance, until probably I was about 18 or 19 years old. So really growing up, it was all about movement and, like I say, just working out your own body and how it adapts to certain sports and situations. So when it became professional, and I mean professional in the fact that UK lottery funding came into effect, we had a centralized program, and suddenly we had strength and conditioning coaches. All the coaches that we had for badminton suddenly went very professional. They did all their training programs, and, you know, suddenly it was like, oh, this is proper. This is serious stuff now. And when to become one of the best in the world, you have to be the fittest, the strongest. You have to be the best athlete, not just the best of your sport. You've got to be physically very, very strong. So for me, it was a bit of a shock to the system where I'd come up, sort of come through the ranks of, having fun and running around, just, sort of working it out for myself, to suddenly it became a program for me every single day. And badminton players trained 3 times a day, 6 days a week. So it's not like these footballers who have a right laugh, play a bit, do a bit of training in the morning and then play on the PlayStation all afternoon. For badminton players, it was relentless. And again, to give you an actual typical day, so the first, 8 till 9 o'clock in the morning, before the session even starts, I would arrive at the badminton centre, and I would have to do all the prehab stuff. So that means all the core stability, therabands, making all my, sort of the joints of my body sort of starting to get ready for what's going to happen later. And then from about 9 to 11 on court, I would be pushed to the maximum. I'd be on that court and I'd be just literally, the coaches would just be chucking shuttles everywhere, and I'd just be running around like a headless chicken trying to get them back. After that would be a quick lunch break, some food, a bit of a power nap. Then later in the afternoon, it would be a physical session. And 3 times a week, it would be a weights training. So it would all be about legs, so lots of lunges and squats. I used to squat, for instance, 130 kilos, to double my body weight. 3 times a week, it'd be interval running. So, again, pushing that heart rate, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute intervals, all those sort of things. Then I'll be back on court for another hour. Then it'd be the ice bath and then the massages. So that sounds like hell, doesn't it? So if you think about that relentless physical regime that you have to do, injuries are going to happen because, you know, the athletes, as you guys will probably know, the athletes, like, we have something about us that will push our brains go, come on, even though our bodies are aching, our bodies want to go on. And sometimes we forget that pain or a little bit of sort of a niggle, we sometimes think, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. So when, you know, we are good in the fact that we can push ourselves, but we're also bad in the fact that we can also go beyond where we should. And yes, so injuries do happen, and you've got that repetitive over and over and over again. So you're going to get, you know, for badminton players, of course, my shoulder doing, you know, rotating all the time like this, like those, no matter how much rehab and massage you do, it's going to get injured. So yeah, for me, being small, I'm only 5'3", so I'm very good low center of gravity. So in that sense, I've got very naturally strong legs. I didn't have any major, and I mean like the snapping of Achilles or ACL injuries. That's what I consider a major injury. But I did have a lot of pulled muscles. I had plantar fasciitis. So anyone who's had that just knows how horrendous that is. Yeah. I tore three of my hip flexors as well. And that was out for 3 or 4 months. So yes, injuries do happen. And that is when athletes really learn a lot about themselves.
I'm going to ask you a question that was given to us by one of our students, Rachel Silver, and she said, how did suffering from an injury affect your mental health, and what support did you have whilst injured?
Well, the first thing that any athlete does when they get injured is go straight to the physio, and that's the first thing. You know, you're in there because panic sets in. I'm injured, I've got pain, and most athletes, you know, 99% of them don't know why or what's going to happen. So straight away you're at the physio, and it is, you know, you are, I don't want to say you're a robot, but you are part of a conveyor belt. You know, the sport relies on you to get physically better. So you listen to the physio, and they will start that process of, you know, diagnosing what you've done, and to start the treatment plan. So straight away, you know that you're in the right hands. And because we're very lucky in the fact that most sports have this professional setup, you know that you are going to be treated well. The problem is that we can treat the physical body because we have great doctors, we have great physios. However, most of the problems about injuries, because you do heal, the body is amazing, and you eat the right stuff and you listen to the program, you generally will start improving and start getting better. The problem is here, and for athletes, we don't like being weak. And when you're injured, you're weak. You can't do what you do. You are suddenly found very vulnerable, and you know someone else is going to take your place. So everyone else is training, and you're not. And these are those little things that start really, really grinding you down. And you know, and I, you know, I know, Andrea, we've spoken a bit, you know, before this, and I think these are the things that we forget. You know, it's very easy to treat a physical symptom. It's not very easy to treat the mental symptoms, because also athletes don't want to admit it. I'm fine. Because if I admit that I'm struggling, I'm again showing vulnerability, and I'm showing that you know, in the sports terms, if you show the mental health problem, or you're showing that you're struggling on that, it's a sign of weakness. And this is where we're really drastically trying to change that in sport, that, you know, it's okay to admit that you're not okay. And so, yeah, now it's a really big focus. And I think this is one of the biggest areas that we need to work on, is that mental health when injured, because this is when you can't get those endorphins, when you can't run around, when you can't do what you do best, when you're queen or when you're king, strutting around on that pitch or that court, suddenly you can't do that. And that's when you start crashing down. So yeah, this is the biggest area where we need to really help athletes work with their brain. Horrible.
Do you think, I was told at the time, I was a big fan of Kelly Holmes, and somebody I knew who worked with her thought that the reason she kept on being re-injured was because she kept on coming back too early. So do you think that temptation to come back too early is partly because of, not wanting to seem weak and not wanting, all the stresses that you're enduring during your time off?
I totally get it. I know, because again, it's that athletes have big FOMO. So fear of missing out. I do not want everyone else training and taking my place. I want to do what they're doing. And, when you see that and you're around that, and you can see, especially if you're not healing or not improving what you're expected to do as well. So as you get older, you don't heal as quickly, or there could be another reason why you're not healing as quickly. And that is because we're superhuman athletes. We're like Superman. We heal like that, And when you don't, we're like, oh, hang on a sec, that's not right. Oh, I'll be fine. I will be fine. I can push through it. My brain is tough. And these, again, the little things we start pushing ourselves beyond, again, lying. Athletes are very good liars to physios and medical staff. We go, yeah, I'm fine. And, how important a competition is. If you don't do it, then you're not going to get this funding, or you're not going to get these points for the Olympic Games. So I know that I've played competitions with so many anti-inflammatories in my stomach and painkillers, because if I didn't, I wouldn't get the points to go to the Olympics. And I was doing my body damage. No one in their right mind would have done what I did. But you know what? I'm an athlete, so I can get away with it. Or I think, that's how the athletes think. So yeah, if you'd have picked me up and shaken me, you could have heard all the tablets in my stomach. But you know what? It's crazy, because you just do it, and you do it in secret. Often athletes will do it in secret, and they will lie a lot to the physio staff. And then again, you hear these stories in hindsight. You hear it from Kelly Holmes, and she probably is like, going, oh, why did what she could have achieved? She could have achieved more, ironically, even though she was double gold Olympic champion. She could have probably achieved more if she had slowed it down, come back slower, listened, not lied, and all that kind of stuff to medical staff.
But it's the fear, isn't it, that causes them to do that, really?
The fear. So every athlete wakes up in the morning and we fear everything. And I mean everything. We wake up and we fear we're going to get dropped. Someone's going to tap us on the shoulder and say, you're not good enough. We fear that, someone's going to let us down. Our body's going to let us down. We're not going to make it. We're not good enough. All those little things that just go over and over and over again. And this is where it's really important in the psychology for athletes, is to really, really build that trust up. So you counterbalance that fear with trust, and you get them to trust themselves, to trust to trust their body, trust their support system. We are stubborn and we're like, yes, I can do this. And so, in everything, we need people around us. We need that group of people to inspire us, to motivate us, to work with us, to make us the best athletes. But suddenly when we get into that, when we're injured or we're feeling vulnerable, suddenly, we get the guards up, the shield up, and suddenly we're like, I'm not going to listen to them. I can do this on my own. And it's trying to get that athlete to understand you can't do it on your own. It's okay. We're here. But you've got to listen, and you've got to be part of a team. So it's even more important when that athlete is injured to recognize the team that are going to help them get back up on there.
We just had a question from Dan, who said, was there a time when you personally were injured but decided to continue playing anyway?
Yes. I don't know an athlete who hasn't. I don't. I've played with a broken toe. You just do. And it's pride, it's ego. Ego is the best and worst thing about an athlete, is that ego. Because I remember being, I was injured. My coach knew I was injured, and they said to me, right, I'm gonna leave it to you, Gail. We want you to play in this match, an England match. But I'm very aware that you're not 100%. It's your call. And so, you know, sensible Gail, sensible, you know, like, again, a normal person would say, you know what, I am not 100%. It shouldn't be, it's not great if, you know, if I should be 100% if I'm going to go and play for England. But athlete Gail, who has got big ego and is like, oh, you know, that pride, and, you know, oh, I'm going to do this. I thought, if I don't do it, someone else is going to, and they might be better than me. And I don't want that. I'm queen. I'm the best. And it's that pure stubbornness. Yeah, like I say, that ego that goes, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, you know, my 95% is better than theirs. So I'm going to go and play. And actually, I wasn't 95%. I was probably about 70%. But you know what? It literally, you know, again, I whacked a load of ibuprofen, painkillers, whatever, and I got out there on that court. And you know what? It does. If I didn't play well, then I would have had a lot to answer for. So again, I pushed through that pain barrier way more than I should have, because I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to say you know, I didn't want to be proven wrong. I didn't want to go to my athlete and my coach and say I shouldn't have played. So do you know what? I played really well. But yeah, so athletes, that's what happens. So you can hide it because they're so bloody stubborn that they'll go and they'll actually go and play really well, even though they're injured. And it's only afterwards you probably have more damage. And then it's like, again, a longer road to recovery. But that's what we do. Yeah.
I've got a couple of more questions from the students, but before I ask their question, there is one question I have. What was the biggest challenge for you in sticking to the rehabilitation plan? Because it's really interesting to me how athletes don't always stick to the to the rehabilitation program they've been given.
Because we think we're better. You know, if you give me a rehab program, I would be like, yeah, this is for like a normal person. I'm like Gail Emms, and I can do this like over and over and over again. So the competitive nature kicks in. So even if you told me, Andrea, if you just do this the once, okay, that is it. Even if you feel great, Gail, do not do it any more than once. I'd be like, you know, this little devil like kind of comes in. Well, yeah, but that's what Andrea says. This is me. I'm superhuman. So yeah, that's what athletes do. There's just a competitive nature kicks in, and they think it is like, well, that's for a normal person. I'm not normal. So yeah, it's making sure it's working with, and I do agree, you know, sports psychologists need to work with the physios with this and understand which athletes. So you'll get some athletes who will be very, very good, and you'll get some athletes like me who'll be like, you know, I want to push harder and push harder. So it's working with the program, the rehab program, and designing the rehab program for the athletes. So you have to sort of change a few little bits as well. I fully believe that even though the rehab program should be set for exactly the same injury, not every athlete thinks the same. And that's the problem. So I fully believe rehab programs should be adapted for that person, how they are.
So this question is based on what Olga asked, and she was talking about ego and pride. So knowing what you know now, would you have behaved similarly?
I wish I could say, I honestly wish that I could say I would behave differently. There's only probably one situation where I would have done anything different. The rest, even though I know, I would have still done what I did. And that's, you know, I think there was, like I say, one time, and that was with my hip. I came back a little bit too early, tried to start running on a hip injury way too early. And I did more damage. So I was out for a few more weeks than I should have been. So that's the only thing that I probably would have done differently. The rest, and
was that based on the ego and the pride aspect then? Yeah.
Totally. Again, today I feel good, so I'm going to push it. I pushed it a little bit, felt fine. I'm going to push it a little bit more. And that's when, you know, it was, I feel okay, I'm going to push it. And then I pushed it that too much, you know. but you learn, that's the whole point. You learn from injuries, but it was me doing that on my own and forgetting that I had a team of people around me. So I went out on my own and I did a little jog, even, against all my team around me saying, don't push it, don't do any jogging yet, don't do this. And, I hear the word don't and I think, so it is, so that was my own fault on that. All the other times, like I said, I know I shouldn't have. I know this. But when you're in that moment, when it's your job, when it's this is my livelihood, this is what I'm about. And that's the problem, is because if I do not do this sport, what am I? And when you're caught up in that sport bubble, an injured sports person is not a happy sports person, and is a very, very, it's like a bear with a sore head that you don't want to prod too much because you don't know what's going to happen.
So this kind of links into what Ben was going to ask. He wanted to ask you if having that ego that you've had has ever been actually beneficial in terms of injury rehabilitation, and if so, how has it helped you?
Yes. So, it being injured, like I say, you can go, you crash, and you start that. You start grieving. Basically, you start a very small grieving process of, I can't be in this situation right now, so I'm going to grieve. And you don't know what's going to happen. So you're out of control. Your body has let you down. So you start that grieving process of, I can't do this anymore. Right. That ego of an athlete helps you go back up. And I fully believe that is, one thing, a strength, that mental toughness, that I can do this. If anyone's going to do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to show people that I can come back. So I've seen people come back from injuries. I've seen ACL, really bad ACL injuries. I've seen, snapped Achilles, and people have gone, they ain't coming back. Even if they do, they're not going to reach it. But these guys come back. Not only, they've come back stronger, and only an athlete can do that. And that is ego. So it does pay, like I say, if you can work with that athlete's ego, because like I say, everyone's ego is different, but working with the right ego, with the right way, you can get an athlete back stronger and better from an injury. And oh my goodness, it does help. Yeah, others wouldn't.
Who was the person who gave you the biggest support in your injury period?
Do you know what? I wish I'd had more support, to be honest. I think that the trouble is, because you're not doing what everyone else is doing, everyone's focused on that. So my coach was off coaching other people. My mixed doubles partner, Nathan, was off training. So it was like, when you've got no friends and you're like, hello, remember me? Don't, that's what it's like. So, so you're wandering around, you don't know what to do yourself because, it's your full-time job. So I literally just go and sit in the physio room, just go, hi. And, the physios would be like, all right, Gail, they don't want to, they want to work. They've got other people to see. So actually for me, it was kind of, I found support in other people away from the sport, actually. So actually my sister was one of the biggest supporters with me when I was injured. She dealt with me crying for no reason whatsoever because I didn't have the endorphins going on. I was just I'm all over. She was like, so it was actually for me quite beneficial to get away from the sport and, sort of talk about, I don't know, standards or anything else, or shopping or, I don't know, just to get my mind away, because when you cannot do something, everyone else is doing it and you can't, sometimes it's just best to kind of, get away from it all and, kind of be distracted by other silly little things that, just can cheer you up a little. So my sister was very, very good then.
We have a question from an unnamed student who wanted to ask, in terms of arousal and anxiety, how much do they affect the actual injury, so because you're anxious and because you're stressed out, how more likely you to be injured in the first place? And then how did you personally manage them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that is the more stress and the more pressure you have as an athlete, I think you do hold it in places where you shouldn't. So, for me, when I was stressed and anxious, I had it all in my jaw and my neck. So, which of course, if you're holding all this pressure here, for a badminton player, that's going all the way down here into my shoulder. So that is the worst thing that I can do. So all that, clenching my jaw, neck pain, headaches, all this. So you're right. And then start, clenching here. That's all tense. And of course, for a badminton player, that's the worst thing you can do. So absolutely, the more relaxed you are, the less, I totally believe that, the less injured you are, the happier the athlete. The way they perform better, they move better, they can just feel, free. And they're a lot more aware of what's going on with their body rather than just, Fitbit says this, Fitbit says that, so I must do this. Whereas if you're relaxed and free, then you know what's right, what's good, how you feel. It's a lot better. And sorry, the second part was recovery, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
So how did you manage the anxiety and arousal was the second part of her question.
Yeah, I think it's not easy to manage that. And I think this is where, you guys in particular can be the best way, because your natural reaction is that fear, the anxiety, the depression. It's celebrating, being really positive environment around. The last thing you want as an injured athlete is someone going, right, so how are you doing? When are you coming back? You're like, what? And especially if you're young and you've got like a very, a senior manager coming in going, right, come on, come on, are you ready yet? You're like, yeah, I'll be ready tomorrow. And, even though it's not. So it's about having, talking the right language around the athlete. It's about having that positivity, celebrating those little goals. So, just as it's important in goal setting for achieving and results, it's important for those goal setting in injuries, and celebrating when you get to a certain level, that's awesome. You're back here. Right. Brilliant. That's great. And, yay, I have no idea what that means in physio terms or whatever. Doesn't matter. You're hearing celebration, you're hearing positivity. That can only be a good thing for you. You are on the right track. You are fine. Decrease that fear level, trust level goes up. And it's, so all these little things can make a massive, massive impact on an athlete recovery.
It's interesting you were talking about motivation there, because we got a question from Chrissy, who's one of our members of staff, and she is, how important was the goal setting, and what other methods of motivation did you use when you were out of the limelight, just to keep going when everything else was hopeless?
When everything was hopeless, I love that. Yeah, it's important to sort of, again, because this is not your expertise, being injured, so you have to kind of trust the physio. And it's important to be honest and say, look, I would like to know the goal setting process. I want to know when I get to here what to do. So again, physios used to be really, really bad in the fact they used to literally not tell you, explain what they're doing, or in a way an athlete can understand. An athlete will know injured and not injured. That is it. So again, it's just trying to explain, go through the process of what's going to happen. And then, that's why it can be, for an athlete, if you're injured, you're injured for a long time, we don't know if that's improving or not. We know two things: injured, not injured, and we want to be not injured. So talking through the process and saying, look, we are here. By next week you're going to be here, and when we're here, we're going to go here, and so on, and just get that little. Athletes like seeing ladders, improving. So massive motivators. And the last, and to do other things, to feel part of the team when you're not, even though you're not competing. So there's other things you can do, like marketing yourself, working on your brand, doing interviews or anything like that. So if you're not, you can still be an athlete and be part of something even when you're injured. And it's remembering that you're not just a body machine, a physical machine. You've got here as well. So I'm a big fan of trying to get connecting circles in sport. So getting athletes involved with coaching, or maybe talking to the youngsters coming through, making them feel part of something even though they're injured. I think it's one of the best things. Scandinavia do it very, very well. I know that as soon as, if an athlete's injured, you know, they're not kind of left on their own. They're really like, don't worry, we still want you. It's still really important. We value you. You value this. You've still got your brain and everything like that. So there's so much an athlete can do, even though they're injured. It's just getting them involved, getting that culture of the club or the organisation, to making sure that, you know, they still feel something. You know, they feel worthwhile.
We've had a lot of questions pop up, too many that I couldn't read and listen to you. And so I'm going to hand over to Neil in a few moments, but there are just another few questions I'd just like to ask you. I know that when I've had athletes that have been injured in the past, they've really worried about the lack of funding, the possibility of having their funding taken away. Was that an issue for you at any time? And what did you do about it?
Yeah, it's horrible. You know, the way the culture of sport is now, you know, and this is a whole new other debate about whether this is the right thing or wrong thing about the sport and how it's funded. But yes, for me, if I had a long-term injury and my ranking, so in my sport, badminton, it was all about world ranking. So even if I was in the top 10 of the world, I got injured, and, you know, inevitably I would slip down the rankings. So then suddenly, because I was now top 30 in the world, that means my funding gets changed and my funding gets cut. And I'm like, well, hang on a sec, you know, when I start getting back again, they were like, well, we don't know if you're going to come back. And these are the kind of little things that we've got in place that in theory, you know, don't get me wrong, in theory, all tick boxing and all that kind of stuff that we can, again, another debate for another time, how sport works at the moment. You know, it's really frustrating because, you know, that might be right in theory, but in practice, you're talking about someone's mental state of they will push themselves to come back too soon because if I don't play this tournament, my funding is going to get cut and I will lose my house. Or, you know, and that gets them more pressure, you get them more anxiety, which again, you know, that vicious circle, not a nice circle, a vicious circle of, you know, what an athlete copes with. So yeah, we want to make it as comfortable and relaxed as possible. But when you've got things like that, you know, yay. So it is on an athlete's mind about, you know, all those little things.
I've just got two more questions. With your experience and knowing what you know now, and I know you do a lot of education around this topic. As you know, a lot of my students, all my students are psychology, so I'm expecting a lot of psychology students to be listening to this. What is the one piece of advice you would give to a psychologist when they are working with an injured athlete?
Be brave. That athlete will suddenly change. They will change their behavior and they will change and they will lie. Okay. It's okay. That's completely normal. I've not seen a completely truthful athlete be exactly themselves, how they are in real life or on that pitch or court. They will change. And you know what? It's okay because that's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's their survival mask or whatever that's flipped a switch in their brain, and this is how they're going to behave because they don't know what else to do. My biggest advice is to start right back at the beginning with that person. Find out who they are. You know, forget about the athlete and find out who they are. So what makes them tick here and here? And you know what? It's actually kind of a relief to an athlete that someone actually knows, you know, forget the body because the body right now is injured. But here's still working and your heart's still working. So if I can give any advice, is get really here, those two areas, and you will have the best impact you can on an injured athlete because suddenly they'll know that someone cares, someone's looking out for them and gets them finding all those little things like the motivators, values, all those really, really important things that they can forget about their body for a little bit and just and actually smile. Yeah, so that's my biggest advice.
And my last question, which is also a question that a lot of the students have asked, is, the Tokyo Olympics is now delayed until 2021.
Yeah.
So for many athletes, is that like a big problem? Is that like a grieving process for them? Is that similar to being injured in not being able to perform at the biggest event of your life?
Yeah. So you've got you're going to have so many different sets of athletes at different ages and different times of their life, and some athletes are literally hanging on, for the last second to play in Tokyo. And I mean the ones that are 30, sort of early 30s, middle 30s. They are literally going, I can just do one more Olympics. And they are hanging on. They are strapping themselves up with like tape and everything just to get to Tokyo 2020. One more year, it ain't going to happen. So for those ones, that's it. They're going to have to call it a day. And I think a rower really, really bravely, just literally about a few weeks ago, just put his hand up and went, I'm done. It was going to be an effort to get to in the boat in August 2020. I can't do another year. So for some of them, they're going to have to call it a day, and they're going to have to be brave about that, because the Olympics, it's usually every force, and they're going to need a big support team around them to make those decisions, and how if they can carry on. Then you've got funding issues and jobs and life and all that sort of stuff. So athletes love control. They love to know where they're going and they're heading. I knew the date of the Olympic Games 2 years before it was actually happening. I knew that on August the 16th, I would be playing my final in Athens 2004, even though it was 2 years before. I knew the date. And now suddenly you've just taken that away, and you've got another year and you're in a different program and you've got all these other different factors. You just don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, it is a bit like being injured but the only thing why it's different is that no one else is in it. So that's the only good thing. And they're like, no, the Olympics been cancelled or postponed. But the good thing is that no one else is going to play while you're not.
Okay.
It's the same for everyone.
Okay. So I'm going to say goodbye there, Gail. Thanks very much. I'm going to hand you over to Neil, who's going to read out some of the questions that have been sent in.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrea.
You're welcome. Bye. Thank you. Neil, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
I can now.
Okay. I've put my camera back on so I can be the thorn amongst the roses there. Let me ask you some of the questions that have been coming in from students and staff. Gail, we've obviously got somebody listening who is currently suffering from a complex back injury.
Ooh.
And they're saying, what advice would you give an athlete who has an injury at the moment and cannot get treatment because of the lockdown? Because they're saying that obviously it's very, very mentally draining to be in that position. Can you think of any advice?
Oh, I feel for you. Yeah, this is probably the worst time to be injured as well. You know what? You're going to have to laugh about this situation and smile. This is it. The good thing is that no one else can train in the best way, because everyone is exactly the same as you. The best thing you do is just call up people, professionals, and get the best advice you can. So whether it is doing some rehab exercises on the floor, sleeping in sort of with your back, I know whether it's just changing sleeping positions or all these little things, just get on that phone and you ask people, get a really good support team, that you can call up for that advice. The next thing you can do is, okay, so your back doesn't work or whatever, what can you do? So whether it's something about distraction, if you want to do like some courses, or if you want to do some education, or it's whether doing some marketing on yourself as an athlete, getting sponsorship up and running. So have a think about the other things that you probably put off as an athlete and probably think, I can do that another day. Now's the time to do it, because even though you're injured physically, you're not injured in your brain. And this is the perfect time to do it. You are still you. Remember that. Smile. This is only temporary. It will get better, and lockdown will finish, and you can get that the actual treatment that you need. So try and keep positive as much as possible. Get on the phone to someone who can be really positive if you're struggling with that, if you're feeling really, really down. think of the person who makes you smile. Think of that person that, you know, who really cheers you up no matter what. Call them. Okay. All these little things are really, really important. And the good thing is everyone's in the same situation. Okay. So remember that.
We have talked a lot about the importance of having the right ego and the right psychology. Are there any mind training techniques that you have or you know about that can help you get into that way?
The only thing, obviously, personally, you know, when you do like mindfulness and relaxation techniques, whether it's, you know, meditation or anything like that, just taking that time out. Because again, you know, what we've talked about, when the more stress we get, the more we hold it in and anything like that. You know, it's not good for us. Not good for us in the fact that, you know, it's not good for recovery, but it's, you know, you start overthinking and over analyzing and, you know, sort of worrying. So yeah, if there's anything like that that really works for you, please do, you know, anything like that. I know as for an injury technique, a recovery technique, and I spoke with Andrea about this, about my partner, Nathan. He had a very bad, well, he had an ankle injury and he had an operation to clean it all out. All went really, really well. The surgeon went, everything's perfect. His ankle is brilliant. Yet Nathan had a mental block about this injury. And he was, every time he went into the forehand corner, he kept thinking about the injury. So yeah, the mind is an amazing way of actually, even though you're fine, your mind can play tricks on you. So yeah, there were some really great techniques and I know Andrea's talked about this before with me, that helping an athlete unblock that blockage. So he had a mental blockage in his ankle that he actually thought was real. So helping the body, so the brain, sort of understand that it's good, and you know, things like that. If that's something that you're really interested in, or you know, want to learn, or you want to have done to you, if that's a problem with you, then yeah, definitely research that as well, because I think that's something that we kind of forget, that we think, you know, there's no point someone telling you, your ankle is fine, if you don't fully believe it. So yeah, lots of really, really good stuff for the brain. And yeah, find what works for you. Try them all.
Absolutely. We had a question asking, I'm sure when you were a young girl and someone thrust a racket in your hand for the first time, it was huge fun. At what point did that fun become a job? And were there times where, because it was a job, you felt like not doing your job some days?
Oh yeah. This is one of my biggest bugbears, when you know, some athletes become professional, that we lose the love. And it's really, really sad. And the reason why we lose the love is because suddenly all these pressures and injuries and stuff that, you know, this winning at all costs mentality kicks in. And, you know, I don't believe that we should have that mentality. I think, you know, athletes need to feel valued and worthwhile, and, you know, treated like people, not robots on a conveyor belt. So yes, I lost the love probably around the age of, from my first Olympics, I suddenly realized what a big deal it was, to the last 2 years of my playing career, when literally my teeth are all ground down. You know, I was panic attacks and anxiety and everything like that, because, you know, what, you know, I'm hitting a shuttle over a net, but suddenly it becomes the most important thing, that if I don't do this right, then everything's going to collapse. And, you know, suddenly it became more than the sport, and it should never do that. So yeah, again, if, you know, sort of looking out for those little signs in people, that if this is happening, if they're getting injured more than they should be, watching the body language of athletes as they walk into the training, watching, you know, sort of all these little signals can give off so much, that, like I say, athletes will lie. We lie a lot because we're scared. So yeah, it's something that I really, really feel passionate about, that we keep that love, and a happy athlete performs better and is less injured. So anything along those lines that you guys can look at and work with, then yeah, you get my, you know, do it.
Did you feel that you were treated differently at all when you came back from injury by your fellow athletes?
Yeah, and it's hard, because you want to kind of just slot straight back in. You know, I'm fine, I'm back, ta-da, look at me. And then suddenly, you know, people are a bit like, where, you know, the coach is a bit wary with you, and you're like, no, I'm fine, you know, don't treat me differently. But, you know, they've got every right to, because they probably had the advice from physios to say, look, she's still not 100% right, don't push her here. But you want to show to everyone, watch out, I'm back. So it's a really horrible situation to be in, to make sure that you don't go over the top, but you want to feel confident. You want to feel that you are back, and, you know, you've done all that hard work, and you want to kind of be praised for it, that you've done the rehab program and now you're back. So it is really, really hard. And then obviously you've been out, so your touch or your skill level might have dropped a little bit. Your fitness has dropped a little bit. And, you know, suddenly you're like, oh no, you know, I'm not back to where I should be. And, you know, it is horrible again. So an athlete needs to realize as well, working with the athlete, that they're not going to come straight back like that, but it's a long process, long journey. There's little steps, and keep that motivation and keep that confidence going. So yeah, it is it's a process, definitely.
We've certainly talked a lot about the emotional side of returning from many situations. How important is friends and family in supporting you when you're going through this?
I think every athlete's different, and some people want to be around the people in sport just so they feel like, you know, oh, I'm here, you know, and I think that's their life and they want to be part of that, which is great. For some people, they want to be out of it, not talk about the sport while they're in that recovery process, the distraction techniques, whatever. The thing is, for lots of friends and families, they don't know what it's like. And that's the hardest problem. So much as I talked about my sister being great for me that she was there, she was a bit like, why are you crying? Why? What's going on? So she didn't understand what was going on with me. And you know, we've talked about this a lot, that how actually sports people are the best people to talk to, support each other. The trouble is, you don't want to talk to someone in your own sport, because whether you trust them or, you know, they might be after your spot or whatever. So actually, I chatted to a lot of other sports people in different sports, and I think we're not very good at that in this country. We kind of stick to our own sport, like, well, I'm football, so I'm going to talk to football. Well, I'm rugby, I'm going to stick to rugby. And I'm Olympic sport, so I'm just going to talk to badminton players. Actually, I learned loads from talking openly to a rower. So I talked to Catherine Granger a lot when I was injured, and she was brilliant because we could talk. She knew, she understood what I was going through, but I didn't have to explain it. I didn't have to, you know, sort of feel threatened by her, because she's not going to go and take my spot. She's a rower. So yeah, I think that's something that should be really, really encouraged. You know, sort of, yes, friends and family, because, you know, they're your loved ones, but working with them to help them understand what a sports person goes through, because, you know, they're not going to understand, but also encouraging sort of other sports people talking to each other as well. I think it's a very, very good thing for recovery.
I think that's great advice, because you are at an elite level, and there are a few people on that level with you. Just going back to a question about psychologists, I've got just two more questions for you, Gail. Okay. Professional athletes often get their sense of identity from being an athlete, and obviously there's the daily training that becomes your identity, and obviously there are injuries. If you lose that identity, that sense of identity you get from being an athlete, can a sports psychologist help you get that back, do you think?
Yes, definitely. Absolutely, 100%. So you have to almost turn away from a sports psychologist and probably become more of a life coach, maybe even a counsellor, maybe even a therapist, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. But you are in a perfect spot to help that athlete understand, especially during injury, that they themselves are not broken. It's just the bit of part of their body that is broken, but they are not. And that is something that, oh my gosh, needs to go straight in, you know, as soon as that happens, because, you know, I remember sort of, I could feel that tear in my foot, and immediately I just crumbled. You know, my whole of me just went, you know, like that. So you can be those people to like really help. You know what, you're okay, Gail, it'll be all right, you know. And, you know, so what else do? You know, what are your hobbies? You know, and they're the little questions that you can just start placing into somebody, that you can suddenly, I could go, you know what, one, this person cares about me, that it's not just about my body and how I play badminton, But yeah, and it starts that process. And I think that, you know, all these little things that if you've done while an athlete is playing or, you know, in their career, that will help them afterwards as well. We don't know if they're going to come back or not, you know, but if someone's gone through a really good sort of mental, holistic sporting journey, they're going to be so much more well placed for life after sport. So it could be from that injury, it might be not be, but you know what, you guys are in a great position to help with that.
Okay, actually two more. One quick one. Would you say that when you had to finally bring the curtain down on your glorious career, was it your mind or your body that told you it was time to go?
It was my mind. Yeah. I think I'm lucky in that. I think lots of athletes have to get because of injury, you know, whether it's a knee, back, shoulder, whatever. And I actually feel for them because I made the decision that I was going to stop. And the reason why I did that is because physically, I'm naturally quite strong. I'm physically, you know, very fit. But mentally, I just had enough. So I called it. And I'm very, very grateful because I think if I'd have had a career over injury, that's another level to help athletes get over, because they never quite know what could have, what should have, what may have happened. And that, I work with a lot of athletes that still can't get over it. The body let them down. And that's something that's really, really, really hard to take. So in a way, I'm very, very grateful that it was my mind that I'd had enough. And again, if someone has to have that, it can still affect them. And I mean this like 10, 20 years later. So again, be mindful of that. I work with, like I say, ex-athletes that you can still feel it. And that's really, really sad. So helping them understand the process of what's happened is going to be very important for them psychologically many, many years down the line.
Okay, I'm going to bring this to a close with one more general final question. Obviously, football has always been our national sport, is dominating the back pages. Do you think that football clubs, particularly in England, should be promoting multi-sports programs at the moment?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I do. I think, you know, sort of, I think football can get, and I think they are getting a lot better at this. You know, I think you probably go back 10 years and they were so, I kind of want to say football were really up themselves, really, really up themselves. But I think, you know, they've seen society, what football can do for society, and they've really adapted their programs. So yeah, I think, you know, there's lots of football clubs are doing lots of sort of initiatives with other sports to help get more kids into everything else as well. If a footballer doesn't make it as a footballer, they give them other programs to help them get into maybe athletics, or I know there's a couple of footballers made it into winter sports for Olympics as well. So yeah, I think football has kind of been taken down a peg or two in the fact of, you know, this mental, oh, we're amazing, no other sport counts, and actually realizing that, you know, it's sport. You know, every sport has got something that can value each other, and I think that they're doing a better job of that. But the trouble is, you know, it's so much money and spotlight in football that, you know, again, it's very easy to start going back into football. So yeah, having a good team, giving a good culture, you know, I think it can change, and times it will change things now. You know, I think sport is in this together. I think every sport has been affected, not just football, and I think we're going to all have to help each other a lot now from whatever happens. So yeah, I think it'll be a good change for sport. I think everyone's going to appreciate each other a lot more.
Yeah, I think that we can only hope that the positive lessons are learned from this horrible lockdown, this horrible pandemic, and that sport will be better for it.
Definitely.
Now, I can't believe 55 minutes of whiz by. I think for me, that shows how much I've enjoyed it. I want to thank you hugely for coming on today. I know that our students will have taken a lot away from this, some for assignments, which is great news, and some just for their own well-being. I'll thank Andrea for hosting the first part and asking you those questions. I just want to thank Diana in the marketing team for setting up the webinar this morning, and all the participants. And I hope that come the new academic year, we'll have you back in at Wembley talking to our students face to face, which is the next best thing. And I wish you well for the rest of the lockdown. And again, thank you very much for joining us today. Just before the students all start logging off, one quick final message. Some of you just logged on with first names today. We will be giving you credits for the UCFB Achievement Award. So we normally ask you to log on using your first and surnames. If you just logged on your own, perhaps you could email Dan Mayhew, d.mayhew@ucfb.com, just letting him know you were part of the webinar today, and we'll give you a credit for logging on today. Thanks again, Gail. It's really good to see you. And stay healthy during this time.
Cool. Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye.